How to build a lab to hack safely, or as I like to call it, yes, master. Now we're going to go through and build a lab, guys, and we're going to build this lab so that you get to play around. And the reason why I want you to play around is because of this. Practice builds knowledge. Knowledge builds confidence. I know this guy. His name's Superdale. Oh. And this has actually been a mantra that I've followed for myself for my entire life, is that I've always noticed that when I have confidence, it's based off the fact that I've built up that with knowledge, and I get my knowledge from practicing. So before we build up this lab, you are going to raise your left hand and swear the following oath. We refer to these as the Superdale rules. And they go like this. The first thing is you promise you will not try out any of these tools on your network or my, yeah, it says my network, so don't come after me. No, we don't want you to do this on your production network, guys. And the reason why we say that is because some of these tools, as soon as you fire them up, you're going to set off a lot of alarms if you're not careful. Those could be through your existing IDS systems or antivirus systems, and I just don't want you to do anything that could possibly jeopardize your environment. You're also going to make sure that you do not try out these tools against your competitor or anybody who's made you upset on Facebook this week. I know, you guys are like, Dale, you're taking away all the fun. You're also understand that the author, that would be me, nor plural site, is responsible for what you do. Listen, if you guys take some of these tools and you go off and do things that are illegal, the last thing I want to hear is someone from the FBI calling me saying, hey, Billy Bob here said that he learned all this stuff from you and you told him you could do it. No, that's not going to happen. You do not hold us responsible. It's time to put your big boy pants on, okay? I'm a firm believer in what we refer to as consequences. We all have the ability to make choices, and those choices result in either good consequences or bad consequences. And finally, you're going to hear me reference some superheroes as we go through several different courses, or any of my courses. I'm a huge superhero fan. And one of my favorite statements is the statement that Uncle Ben makes to Peter Parker as he dies. Anybody remember what he said? Yeah, he said, with great power comes great responsibility. Can I hack your system? Yep. Can I read your email? Yep. But that doesn't mean I'm going to do it. In fact, one of my other favorite terms is integrity. And I defined it as what you do when people aren't watching you. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's talk about our virtual lab. We've designed this course so that you can play around with these things. We're going to do this in a virtualized environment. And in order to set this up, you're going to have to come up with some type of virtualization technology. And that will be installed actually on a host machine. And then that host machine is going to have enough resources so that you can fire up to 5 different machines. Now, they don't necessarily have to be on all at the same time. In some cases, we may only fire up 2 machines because we want just one to try a certain attack on another. And other times you might fire up, 3 or 4 machines just so you can see if you can do a flood of some sort. As far as the virtualization is concerned, you can use whatever virtualization technology is comfortable to you. If you're not comfortable with any of these that I'm about to show you, don't worry. I'm going to walk you through the virtualization technology that I enjoy, which is called Hyper-V. I'll take you through step by step. I'll show you how you can install this. It's not going to cost you anything. We can use evaluation stuff here, guys. So yes, you can use Hyper-V, which is something that comes on all these server platform products by Microsoft, as well as they just included it, by the way, in Windows 8.1 Enterprise Edition, which is kind of cool. You can also use VMware, and you could even use something very, very basic like VirtualBox. Now, VirtualBox, I believe, is still free. VMware also has a free product out there. Hyper-V has its own free product, but it's kind of an interesting SKU. One of their SKUs is just called Hyper-V Server, and that is actually free, but if you fire that bad boy up, you're going to get a DOS prompt. And unless you know how to manage a server from a DOS prompt, you're in trouble because there's no GUI. But again, I'm going to show you what we're going to do is we're going to go install an operating system, and with Microsoft platform, you can install and run a 180-day eval of a particular OS. And then I'm going to show you a nifty little command that we can type in that would allow me to renew that evaluation for up to 3 times. So 180 times 3, yeah, that's quite a bit. So first of all, let's talk about that host machine as far as the requirements are concerned. The first thing you need to do is you need to make sure that you have an OS for the Hyper-V environment. I'm going to be either running Windows 8.1 Enterprise or Server 2012 R2. This host machine should also have at least 16 gigs of RAM. Now, you might be able to get away with 12 gigs, maybe 8, but you're not going to be able to fire up as many machines at a single time. So 16, 32 would actually be better. You'll also need to make sure that you have at least a 50 gig hard drive. Now, the hard drive I'm going to be using is a solid state drive, which means my virtual machines will probably be a little snappier than if you were to use a standard hard drive. And now when I say you need at least a 50 gig hard drive, I mean free space. 50 gigs of free space in order to run these virtual machines. And you'll also obviously want to have a network interface card on this host machine. Now, this network interface card will be connected up to possibly your production environment, or it may be hooked up directly to the internet, and that's okay. Now, this host machine should be able to talk to the internet because you're going to do some research on it. We talk about vulnerability research. You need to be able to just get out on the internet quickly and see what's out there. But the virtual machines themselves, they do not need internet access. So as far as the virtual machines are concerned, we're going to fire up a couple of them. After we bring up our host machine, we're going to fire up a Windows 8.1 box. Then we'll go through and install Windows 7. And we'll also fire up a couple of servers, both Server 08 R2 and Server 2012. And it could be 2012 R2, or it could be Windows Server 08. It doesn't necessarily have to be the R2. I just know a lot of times people like to see what's the latest and greatest as far as vulnerabilities are concerned. But it needs to, the reason why we fire up all these different machines is because I want it to be representing the network that you currently have deployed. Some of you guys may not have come over to Windows 8.1. Resistance is futile. You may be stuck on Windows 7, and that's great. Great operating system. But you also may want to, again, check around, and maybe you got a couple of people that are using Windows 8.1. Then we're going to fire up another virtual machine. It's kind of an interesting one. This is going to be a Linux distro that is going to include something that used to be called Backtrack, but is now called Kali. Kali or Backtrack is a pen testing product that we will use to test for certain vulnerabilities, and we'll want to have that as a separate virtual machine. Now, as far as the virtual machines are concerned, we actually have to configure their virtual environment. And what we'll do is we're going to go through and we'll configure each machine with a certain amount of memory and a certain amount of CPUs. But the one thing we want to do is make sure that the virtual machines are on their own separate network, almost like a VLAN, but not quite. The network itself only exists in the virtual world, and the virtual machines can talk to each other because we may throw some attacks one at a time at the different machines, but they're not allowed to communicate with the host machine. And this will help to keep the integrity of the host machine because, again, it has access to the internet or possibly even to your network. So the first step is actually getting your download on. What I mean by this is you need to go and get the operating systems, and we're going to start downloading those. And you're going to download them, and you can either save them as an ISO, or if you're one of those guys that has to have the physical DVD, you can burn it out to a DVD. But we'll be installing. Hyper-V allows me to mount up an ISO as if it's a virtual CD or DVD drive. And by the way, if I say CD in the future here, hopefully you guys know that I mean the DVD, CD drive, or whatever it is. It's just a matter of storage, right? You could also actually install this from a thumb drive if you want to shoot these out to a thumb drive as well. So if you don't have these operating systems, that's okay. I'll show you how to grab those. If you do, or if your company currently has a TechNet or MSDN or even a volume license subscription with Microsoft, you can go off and get those downloads, maybe even talk with your IT guy. Unless you're the IT guy, then talk to yourself. Anyway, get those ISOs. One thing that you can do, especially if you don't have one of these subscriptions, is you can use some of the trials or the eval copies of these operating systems. Now, I'm going to give you kind of a heads up here. The trial and evaluation copies, Microsoft is not real excited about keeping older operating systems up or available for evaluation because they're always trying to push people to the newer stuff. So as an example, if you go to the evaluation site for Microsoft, you're not going to see Windows 7 available for download because they're trying to obviously have people evaluate Windows 8.1.
But Dale, how am I going to get a hold of Windows 7?
Well, I have some links here for you, and I've shortened up the links that allow you to go off and grab a copy of Windows 7. Comes in about, I think it's like 5 or 6, maybe 7 different files that you'll download. You'll then launch the first file, which will uncompress them. This particular version of Windows 7, though, was actually built off of Virtual PC, which was something that came with Vista back in the old days. It was so that you could play around with newer operating systems. So we'll have to take a little extra care in setting that particular product up. We have to remove the components for Virtual PC out of it, and then it comes right into Hyper-V with no problems. But don't worry, I'll show you how to do that. As far as getting a hold of Kali, we're just simply going to go to the website, www.kali.org, and they have a link there for downloading Kali, and you'll see it come in either a full, mini, or VMware edition. The VMware edition is exactly what it sounds like. It's an edition that you can download a file, you can download it and mount it immediately inside of VMware. Apparently there's no love for Microsoft there. There's also the mini edition, which you can install on a bootable device, like a thumb drive. And then they have a full edition. I'll be grabbing the full edition and running it from the ISO in the virtual machine. Now, in order to get the trial editions, easiest place to go to get those bad boys is going to be on the TechNet Evaluation Center. And again, I'll take you through as we walk you through how to install each one. I'll show you how to go out and find the file, download it, set it up inside of Hyper-V, where I'll actually start off with setting up the host machine. But I'll take you through step by step. Don't worry, I've got your back. Now, for those of you guys that are a little bit more advanced, and if you guys are familiar with the Microsoft VHD program, you could also use those files. These are basically Hyper-V machines that have been pre-created. All you have to do is mount them inside of Hyper-V, fire them up. You don't even have to go through a full installation. I will be installing Server 2012 R2 and Windows 8.1 via the VHD program, just because it makes it easy and I don't have to go through a full installation. Okay, so we're going to go through in this demo. I'll take you through step by step. We'll start with the host machine. After we get the host machine configured for Hyper-V, we'll then go through and show you how to get your source OSs. We'll then go through and show you how to configure, because it'll take a while to download. But while they're downloading, we'll configure the virtual network on the host machine. We'll then install the clients. And then we got to go back, and on some of the clients, we're going to configure them to do certain things. For example, we're going to install DNS on one of our servers. We'll then go through and set up the IP addresses on the virtual machines so that when we talk about via IP, a lot of times we don't know the name of the computer. We're just doing it by IP. If we set them up identical, if you guys follow me along, then when I say I'm going to hit this particular IP, you can be right there with me. And, of course, we'll also have some additional network settings that we'll have to configure. So let's get going. So the host machine is going to be a little unique in the fact that you will have to burn the file that I'm about to show you. You have to burn this to DVD or maybe put it onto a bootable USB drive. But what you're going to want to do is very simply go to the TechNet Evaluation Center. And you can get there by Googling it. And you'll have to come in and log in. You can see I've actually logged in. It requires a Microsoft account, so like either Hotmail or an Outlook.com account. And afterwards, this is actually kind of a great place to come to get some updates of what's coming out. Plus, you can kind of play around. They've got some virtual labs that you can play around with. But I'm going to come over here to the to the Evaluate Now drop-down. And I'm going to come down here and select I'd like to run Server 2012 R2. You'll notice here that we have Windows 8.1. Guess what? I'm going to be coming back here to get Windows 8.1 a little later. But I'm going to go ahead and start this, grab the 2012, and it breaks it down, shows me all the different 2012 products here, including the Essentials product. Here's that Hyper-V server that's completely free. Notice it's unlimited. Or the other ones typically have are, and of course there's a Hyper-V Server 2012 R2, so there's the R2 editions, which is a newer edition for those of you guys that aren't familiar with it. The other ones are 180-day evals. So you'll notice up here, it says 180-day eval. It asks me what type of an install I want to use. Well, because this is going to be my host machine, I'm going to grab the ISO, hit register to continue. I'm going to stop the video just for a second. In your world, you're going to see it come up and verify some information about you. and then you'll continue from there. So hang on, I'll be right back with you. So it comes up and says, hey, where do you want to save this file? And I've got a folder here that I just created called CEH project. I'm going to come in here. Here's a subdirectory that I called ISOs, where I'm going to place my ISOs. And I'm just going to give this a different name, though, because this could be really confusing for me. So I'm going to call this one Server 2012 R2 Trial. Now, I'm going to use this 2 different times. I'm going to have this as a physical DVD, which I'll burn out using some type of DVD burning software, hopefully you have. Or I could move it over to a bootable USB drive. But then I'm also going to use it later because I want to have a virtual machine that's also running 2012. So I'm going to use this file twice. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And that's going to start the download. Well, let's go, while we're here, let's go get the other source CDs. I'm going to come back up here and select I'd like to get Windows 8.1 Enterprise. Same thing comes up here. Looks like this is only a 90-day eval, but that's okay. I'm going to show you, remember, I'm going to show you a command that's going to allow you to reset the 90 days when it expires or when you get close to expiring. So you get another 90 days, and you can do that 3 times. Again, I'm going to continue to register, and again, I'm not going to show you. So hang on, I'll be right back with you. Okay, again, it's kicking me up and asking me where do I want to save the ISO. So I'm going to just highlight all this thing, and I'm going to make this easy to remember. I'm just going to call this Windows 8.1 Trial. So I'm going to hit Save, and we'll let that download. Okay, while those are downloading, I'm going to go ahead and grab Windows Server 2008 R2. The easiest way to do this is just do a simple Google search for, I usually do trial. You can see here, Server 2008 R2. In this case here, it's my first link up here. So I'm just going to click on it. Takes me to the download section here for 2008 R2. Again, it's a 180-day eval. I'm going to select the language. I'm going to hit continue. Again, it's going to ask me where do you want to save this. I'm going to call this one again Server 2008 R2 Trial. I'll let that download. Now, going after Windows 7 is a little bit more difficult, and the reason behind that is because, again, Microsoft is wanting people to not necessarily try Windows 7. You more than likely are using it already. They'd prefer you to actually use Windows 8.1. So if I go back to that previous Google search, you'll notice that there's a link here that says to grab a Windows Server 08 R2 and Windows 7 eval version. This is actually on a Microsoft site. It takes you this nice little article about how you can get a hold of these. If you click on the link for Windows 7, it actually takes you to the eval center and does not pull up Windows 7. It pulls up strictly the Windows 8 stuff because they've taken the 7 off. Now, in order for me to fix that for you guys, what I've done is there is an evaluation version available to you. Now, this evaluation version is based off of Windows 7 Service Pack 1 with Internet Explorer 9. There's 7 separate downloads, and I did some tiny URLs for you so you can find them very quickly. If you will just go to http://ethicalw7p1 and then obviously through P7 would be the downloads. Grab those. We're going to put those into a single directory, just like I've done here. The first one is an executable, and the rest of them are just RAR files that are needed for the executable to launch. When you uncompress these, in fact, while those other ones are downloading, let's go ahead and uncompress that. I'm going to just double-click on it. It's going to bring up a license agreement here for me. I'm going to hit Next, or I should say I agree. It then says, where do you want to uncompress this? Well, we're going to uncompress this. I'm going to create a folder here called, we'll go Windows 7. This may take some time to uncompress. So while that's uncompressing, I'm a multitasking type of guy. Let's go ahead and get a hold of Kali for us. So we're going to come back to our web interface, and we're just going to simply type in www.kali.org. And this is the home page for Kali. I'm going to come down here and select I'd like to download Kali. And you can download these several different ways. We can either grab it via torrent or via ISO. I'm going to go ahead and grab, and I'm going to do not the mini or the ARM versions. That's for mobile devices. I'm going to use the 64-bit edition, and I'm just going to click on the ISO. And yes, again, it's going to say, where do you want to keep this? Hey, look, it kind of named it pretty good for me here. Kali Linux, the version, 64-bit. That's cool. We'll go ahead and save that as well. Okay, so while those are finishing downloading, we're going to pause the video. And when we come back, I'll show you how to fire up your host machine. Okay, so in this section, we went through, and first of all, we talked about the do's and don'ts. You remember those? You do promise to learn the tools. You promise that you will not, you don't use these on your production environment, nor against me. I will hunt you down. We also went through and talked about the different clients that we'll go through and create. We've got some modules, some additional modules coming up that'll show you how to install those one at a time in case you don't know how to do that. We also went through and showed you that the need for us to create a virtualized network so that, again, when we do the attacks and run some of these tools, that we're not doing it against a production environment. It's completely separated. We won't damage anything. Again, you got to be careful. I've been in classes where we were teaching at a particular training center, and I had students that were running the tools on the production side and actually took down, even though they were in a separate VLAN, they were taking down the business side of that learning center. It was really quite not fun. We then took you into how to set up the host machine using Microsoft's virtualization solution called Hyper-V. And again, you can use any virtualization that you want, so long as you achieve the same objective, and that is getting your clients so they communicate with each other, but not on the production side. Okay, up next, we're going to go through and show you how to install and configure the server client virtual machines so you can use those as targets.